Good morning, everyone. This is Ken with Minotank, and we have RajNation with RajNation Innovation. Today, he's going to teach you how to be like Beyonce. Let's get started.
Put the place up. Put my face up. Why you doing all that? Thought you was my wife, but you slapped me in the back.
Start working on our dancing, Raj. Okay. Oh, you started dancing at the end. Okay. All right. Yeah. We're doing it. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Okay. Go ahead and test it one more time for me, Raj. I'm gonna make sure I can hear your audio for everyone else.
Hello, everybody. RajNation here.
Perfect. All right, Raj. So I think part of life in 2018 is wanting to be like Beyonce. I don't think I've met a single person in my life who said they didn't want to do that. So I think you got to be a little careful on over promising here. But talk to me about today's show of being like Beyonce.
Yeah. So let's talk about being like Beyonce. What I really mean by that is, as you said, who doesn't want to be Beyonce? Whether you're a man or a woman, you want to be part of that queen bee, or what is it called, the beehive? Yeah, you want to be part of the beehive.
Raj,
and
you know what
one
it
day,
is.
ideally,
Don't play like you don't know what it
queen
is,
bee.
Raj. Raj, you know what it is. Don't try to play aloof. We all know it's the beehive.
So, in the spirit of being like Beyonce, the reason I wanted to talk about this topic this week, really what I mean is, as a startup founder, how do you embrace the artistry, the performance that someone like Beyonce has on stage, and work that into your own pitch, whether you are on an actual stage in front of an audience or in an investor boardroom pitching to a closed group of people. You can infuse those elements of artistry that, like Beyonce, into your pitch yourself. And the reason why it's really timely for me is because I just played a concert last Saturday night. And so all of these elements were on my mind as I was trying to channel my own Beyonce live in front of a crowd of a few hundred people.
So what you're really saying is, as a startup founder, we want to have that kind of attention and that name and that cachet because we want our company to be important, but we also want ourselves to be important. And we want to have that notoriety. And so that's what we're getting into today. Like, how do we use the tools that we can learn from musicians or performers in how they present themselves and continually grow their audience, the same as we can use in the startup community? Is that kind of where we're going, or am I off track?
Yeah. No, you're exactly right with that. That's a good summation.
Cool. Okay. So the first topic you gave us, we have three core topics today. Topic number one is use repetition. I'll tell you a quick story about this, Raj. I think anyone knows who, if they've ever met me or they know anything about Minotank, I happen to speak fluent Mandarin, and so I'm a big fan of language and linguistics and how that all works. And repetition is a huge part of most of our society. I know that you as a rapper can talk about the chorus and how important that is. You never hear something once and remember it forever. Usually you hear something 12 to 15 times. People say the 7 multiple, but the more the better. And that's how it impacts into your brain over time. So Raj, why don't you tell us about using repetition in our pitching and how we can use that to acquire customers and investors?
Yeah, well, I think you teed it up really nicely. It's for whatever reason I've seen in the business world, a lot of people are scared to say the same thing twice because they're like, oh no, we already said that. We can't say that again. They'll think we're, coming off as robotic or something like that. But the reality is, think about a song that you like. What does that song have? It has the hook, the chorus. It comes over 3 or 4 times per song. And that's the part that you remember. And that's the part that you sing along with. And that everyone else sings along with too. So even if it's a song that someone doesn't know very well, they may have heard that chorus, or they may have heard the song a few times, and which means if they've heard it say 3 times, they've heard the chorus 12 times because the song maybe has 4 chorus
Right.
parts to it. So same thing with your pitch, right? It's not just saying, hey, here's our solution, and then mentioning it on like slide 4, and then not coming back to it because you're so deep into talking about all the features, the benefits, et cetera. The more you talk about the top line solution, the more you mention your top line solution, that is what ultimately people are going to remember. And yeah, you can have your features, your benefits besides that, but you want it to all come back to, and that's why we are this product. That's why we are this service. That's why we are this company. You want them to get them to singing your name ultimately at the end of the day, so that they don't leave the room saying, wait, I'm confused on what it is they actually do. You want them to say, oh man, I love those guys. I love those girls who were up there. They had the product that was all about bringing local organic dog food right to your door every single Monday. And that happens with repetition, not just saying it once, but saying it over and over and over again. I mean, the other way to think about it too is like a commercial, right? It gets stuck in your head because you see it a bunch of times.
Sure.
So, you know, it sounds a little hokey to say be like a commercial, but you kind of want to embrace that philosophy. Feed it into their heads so that way they cannot like think without thinking of your name when your category comes up.
And I'm not sure it's really hokey, Raj. I mean, when you're talking about, think about the average angel investor. So we work with the Angel Capital Association, and they talk about the fact that most angel investors will look at an angel investor. This is a non-professional investor. This is something they do with their passion, their money. They see over 100 opportunities per year. Will you be the best? Probably not. Will you have the most revenue? Also probably not. Will you have the most education? Doubtful, right? But if you are memorable and impactful, and you have done what you say, right? Repeat it over and over and over again. I can name countless startups that did this really well. One of my favorites is Dollar Shave Club. They have an amazing video. They talk about their solution a number of times in one little minute and 30-second video. It must be 6 times, where they talk about the fact that you need to subscribe to razors instead of buying them at the store. A really simple buy-in, very inexpensive. They say, here's a reason why. Do it. Subscribe to razors. Here's another, you don't need flashlights on your razors. Here's another, go ahead and subscribe to it right now. And so as repetitive as it might sound, I don't think it's hokey at all. I think commercials work really well. I think, car salesmen are highly dependent on that. And I think the fact that an investor needs to think of you afterwards. If they walk into that room, you have a conversation, you leave, and you do not stay in their mind afterwards, you've really wasted a lot of your time. And you need to be able to do that on a repeatable basis over and over again. So repetition, I would say, is paramount to being like Beyonce.
Well, and even if you think about, too, like, take a company like, as you were saying that, I was thinking of Jimmy John's.
Sure.
Everyone knows Jimmy John's, Freaky Fast, right? Those Jimmy John's, Freaky Fast, synonymous with one another. You don't question Jimmy John's value proposition ever. And I'll tell you, they've been so good at feeding that message into people's heads that most of America is okay with like kind of subpar tasting sandwiches for the fact that it just gets to you in like less than 60 seconds after ordering it.
Yeah. And their delivery, it's really interesting, right? And so you just say, okay, like here's my value prop, and this is what I'm going to go for, and that's what my customers are willing to pay for. And that's, repetition is so important. For us here at Minotank, so we work with minority, we don't exclusively work with them, but we definitely focus on the fact that, minority founders receive less than 9% of venture capital. And people laugh because every single time I go in front of a meeting, I say that and I bring it up all the time. But, and you as a founder, you've said whatever your value prop is 100 times. So you're exhausted by it yourself. And you say, they must know, or someone must know. Like, I don't need to keep saying this. I've said it 100 times. But then you have to remember to yourself, this is the first time they've heard this. And this might be the first time they've ever heard this information ever, so you can't let it sound mundane and boring. Minority founders have a lot of problems. It can't be disengaging just because you've done it a million times. They have to be engaged, and they have to remember that directly afterwards. So I couldn't agree more. Repetition is paramount to making success in your business.
I liken it to, I have a podcast, and I don't decide to just not do the intro of the show anymore, or you don't not have the Minotank intro of the show just because you've done a handful of episodes, just because I've done a bunch of episodes, right?
Right.
Or even take a show that you like or that is really popular. How I Met Your Mother went on for 9 seasons. They didn't just stop doing that introduction once they got to like season 5 because they're like, oh, everyone knows it by now. No, you never know who's hearing it for the first time, to your point. And bringing it back to the Beyonce, the music idea of it, right? She doesn't go and perform a live show, and she's like, you know what? This time I'm not going to do the hook of Lemonade because everyone knows it. They pay hundreds of dollars.
They live for
to
it, yeah.
That hook along with her. So understand that you have that hook too, that you need to use repetition because people, once they hear it a few times, they like what they're already familiar with. They want to hear it again.
Right. And it's kind of the funny thing when you talk about Jimmy John's and like other foods. It's interesting how we think repetition is annoying until we crave it, right? So like, it wouldn't make sense that you'd eat Chipotle every single week for 6 months, but it does if you crave it. So the repetition in the beginning was annoying until you've surpassed that barrier of annoying to craving and interesting, and now they want to give that each time, right? It's a reward system. There's a lot in the startup world where they talk about sounds and vibrations and things on apps that really reward you with repetition and saying like, click, win, ba-ring, like great. And now you get addicted to that sound and you want that appreciation value. So using repetition in your pitch makes exact sense. I think it's really important that you have, a structured pitch and that you're able to repeat your value prop a number of times.
To be clear, are you saying it's a problem that I eat Chipotle once a week?
I'm not. No, I actually love Chipotle. I think their business model is extremely interesting, and the fact that they're verticalized and they own most of the stuff that they produce is truly amazing. So, all right, Raj, let's keep it moving. Let's not focus on Chipotle. So the next major topic we have is, can I kick it? What are we talking about here?
Yes, you can. So, okay, so if you're a fan of hip hop, then you know this phrase that's been around in songs, back to Tribe Called Quest, potentially even before them, where the rapper will say, "Can I kick it?" And the audience will say back, "Yes, you can." In fact, the concert that I just played, the hook of one of my songs is just me saying, "Can I kick it?" and then putting the mic out to the audience where they say, "Yes, you can." Now, what you can extract from that is the idea of, in a pitch to, again, an actual audience on a stage or to a closed boardroom of investors or customers potentially, bring that idea of getting the audience involved, whoever your audience is, get them involved in your pitch. The "can I kick it? Yes, you can." If you think about it, it's literally just the rapper being like, "Are you still listening? Are you still paying attention? Are you with me here? You are? Okay, great. Now I'm going to continue." So when you're in the midst of a pitch, you can feel like you're on a roll. And a lot of times, people aren't tracking with you as closely as you think they are, especially because you know it way better than anyone else does. So it's important to pause and get the audience involved to make sure they're still tracking with you. And because people want to feel like they're part of something as well. Like, I always love when I see pitches that open with some type of just question that gets the audience to just raise their hand at the very least. For instance, one company I'm working with right now, A La Carte Charts out of Phoenix, they talk in the beginning of their pitch, the founder will say, "How many of you know what's in your 401k? And, I don't know what's in my 401k. And that's something that immediately gets people to be like, "Oh, wait, maybe I should be paying attention to what's about to be said." And then he goes into, well, the reality is most people know more about Kim Kardashian than they knew what's in their 401k. And then you're like, okay, well, yeah, I know Kim Kardashian, and you keep on going, right?
Interesting.
So simple things like that, just to get the audience involved, are really powerful. Another one, Be Safe Meds, who I mentioned on last episode in the STI prevention space, during their pitch, in the midst of it, not even at just the beginning, but in the middle of the pitch, when they talk about how they came up with the concept and how they came up with the business, the founder talks about how he was in Las Vegas at a conference and he struck up a conversation with the bartender, and then that led to, and he goes, "You've all heard that line about Las Vegas, right? What happens in Vegas?" And then, I actually saw them at a demo day. Everyone in the room just inherently out loud, probably not even realizing they did it, was like, "Stays in Vegas." So the idea of just bringing familiarity to the table and getting people involved gets them that much more invested in the process. Because if you get someone, it basically turns it from a one-way monologue into a dialogue.
Sure.
And the more you can make something a conversation, the better it's going to be, because people don't want to be talked at, they want to be talked to.
Sure. I can totally get behind that. And I love that response mentality, because, especially when you're pitching to, you have two major options you just talked about, right? Number one is you're in a boardroom with, let's say, 15 investors right in front of you. And number two, you have a huge audience in front of you, like you're pitching to a big startup event. Both are unique in the fact that you need to still engage the audience. And right, in a boardroom, you have 5 people who are professionals in this. They might have interest. They might have preconceived notions. They might not be listening. But in that big audience, now you have 200 people, right? And that's all different levels of education and knowledge and interest and so any kind of engagement. I love a la carte saying, who knows what's in their 401k? You might have 3 hands. And then if you were to call them out, they'd be like, Apple? Microsoft? Which I'm sure they wouldn't know. And then, re-engaging by using a super popular, icon like Kim Kardashian. It makes perfect sense. I love that. I love that. The engagement... the call and release might, it's so funny to akin this to music, but it sounds kind of hokey, if you might say, but it's also a way to make sure, did I remember? If I had to audibly participate and they say, how many of you, and I have to say me or you or whatnot, and it's a very small number of us, I'm going to remember that, and I get a reward. I feel good. I feel like I'm participating. It's not just a speech. Now we're having a conversation. I love it. Can I kick it? Yes, you can. I like it.
And you'll notice too, like in those stage settings, how people like physically like lean into what's being said. Shout out to Sheryl Sandberg, lean in. But people will actually have a physical response when you get them involved, not just physically like raising their hand. But now they're, they go from like laying back to like, okay, what are they saying?
Right.
And to tie back to incorporate this plus repetition, the previous point, you don't have to just get the audience involved once. You can get them involved multiple times. So to use the Be Safe Meds example again, I mentioned in the middle of the pitch, they have the audience finish the Vegas line, but they also start their pitch by handing out, and this, it doesn't work for hundreds of people, it works for smaller settings. They hand out little folded pieces of paper and they say, don't open this until we tell you. And they open their pitch and they talk about the statistics around, first off, we architected a story around going on a Tinder date, basically. And then, you have a good time, you get home, you were worried something went wrong. Potentially you contracted something. And then we have the people in the room open up the piece of paper. And 50% of those pieces of paper have some type of sexually transmitted infection written on it. Ooh. And you can see the people in the room being like, what? No, what? No, you're kidding. I didn't get that. And it illustrates the larger point for them, which is the statistic that 1 in 2 sexually active adults by age 25 contract an STI.
Got it.
And
got it. I love that engagement. It's so smart.
Piece of paper, right? A folded piece of paper with a word written on it gets people to be like, no, not me.
So, memorable, engaging. You know what it is. It has a tangible I love that tangible aspect as well. And this is really being innovative with the way you pitch, right? Stop making pitching just an only listening and leaning back situation. How do you engage an audience and how do you bring them in? I love that. Doing, kind of bringing them forward, giving them something tactile to work with. And then, some didn't. So if I'm sitting next to someone, they got an STI, I say, oh gosh, and it's a funny way to communicate with the audience. But I can especially see it in a boardroom with 6 to 10 people saying, okay, now we can understand and say who got the STIs, who did not get the STIs, raise your hand. Okay, what are you going to do about it? Now you have this problem. What's your situation? And here comes our value prop.
Exactly. And what's really cool too is to see the dichotomy or the juxtaposition of the people who are like, oh no, and the people who got like a blank, like, hey, you're clean card, the relief they have on their face.
Sure.
And it's like, this is what we're right? This is exactly the problem that exists in the marketplace. And now you've gotten them to feel it by getting them involved. They don't just hear it. They don't just know it or see it. Now they feel it. And I'll tell you, I tell all my companies this. If you can tap into someone's heart, you can tap into their mind.
Sure. And so talk to me about the structure there, Raj. So when you were developing the strategy for this company, you said, okay, we're going to have a visualized story. We're going to use a conception that people understand already. They understand Tinder. They understand online dating. They know it's a thing that goes on a regular basis. And then we're also going to implement a tactile element. Not all companies can do this, right? Like some companies say, we do grain trading. We trade corn and give a little pack of corn or something. Not a bad idea. Hey, But for example, Minnow Tank, we have nothing to hand someone. We can't hand someone something. Maybe we can hand them a piece of paper with all the brands that we worked with, all the logos. But at the same time, talk to me about how, for example, like use us as an example. How can we be more engaging as a perfect example, and how can we use the strategy of storytelling and tactile when we're doing audience?
Yeah, so let's say you're in front of your ideal audience of founders and investors on a stage somewhere, right?
Yep.
You could start with something like the get people to raise their hands in terms of like, how many of you have ever been frustrated that, you go and do a demo day and you only have access to the people in the room? And then
Sure.
you'll get, pretty much everyone to raise their hand. What you could do is actually pick out one specific person and essentially do a live case study. What's your company? Okay, can you tell me about your experience? Like, do you feel like you're bound by who you know and you don't have access to a larger nationwide? Now you can kind of just like lead them into it, right?
Yep.
And now you've got not you saying it, you've got a live person exhibiting the problem that you are solving in the marketplace.
And that works for so many different like B2B, B2C companies where we especially, and that might sound a little segmental because like not everyone gets to get on a stage, but many people get to talk to investors or at least get down to a room. And when we say pitching, we have to remember that like when you're pitching and evangelizing your business, it's not just to investors and to like other companies. It's also to your employees. And it's to like people you want to employ. You're always pitching and trying to convince and evangelize the fact that what you're saying makes sense and it's a good idea. And so it's a great point to make where we talk about how we're able to use this pitch and use that like that response activity. So I'm going after you. Hey, okay, you've had experience with this. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about your experience right now because I'm positive I can lead you mentally to where we need to go to get to my value proposition. So I love that. That's really cool.
Yeah. The other thing too is if someone's not willing to do that, like let's say you as the founder are not willing to take someone on that journey like live, that to me is a sign that do you believe in like the serious problem that does actually exist, or have you led yourself to believe that there's a problem that doesn't actually exist?
Sure.
Right? If someone is not willing to do something like that, then how much do you really believe in this? If you think you can't get someone, like have you just always just pictured, hey, there's people out there who have this problem, but you don't actually think someone in an ideal room of people doesn't have the problem, right? That's the sign to reassess what are you actually going after.
Right. And do you have the confidence? Are you the right person to lead it and whatnot? Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And I think that really leads into the next topic we have, which is roll with the punches, right? And you just talked about this in your conference example. We at a live stream company, we have the exact same problem all the time where we say, hey, we're going live. And then, is it live? Audio issues? But that's the beauty of new technology. So we're always, there's very few startups who say, we're going to go fix how you walk on the sidewalk. That's not a good example, but some like old traditional thing that everyone does. You're oftentimes trying to push. Everywhere. You're right. You're trying to push into the new. What you're always trying to do as a startup is, let's go for blockchain. Let's go for Bitcoin. What can we do to go into the new space? Because we're going to capture that brand new market. We're going to aggressively move that direction. So rolling with the punches often has to happen because problems will happen. Regulations will change. Legal will change. The tech landscape will change. A new competitor arises. So, Raj, I'll let you. It's your show. Sorry, but let's talk about rolling with the punches and how it should work.
Yeah, I mean, then there's two kind of ways to look at it. There's rolling with the punches in terms of a regulation change. There's rolling with the punches in terms of when you're live pitching your company. What happens when something goes unexpectedly?
Yeah.
Again, to come back to the show I played on Saturday night, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong.
Yeah.
Now, this is my first.
Wait, you should tell them more about that. So what exactly went wrong? And let's akin that towards the startup pitching, right?
Absolutely. So first off, this is my first show I've played in 2.5 years, just because business stuff took over my life for a while. And I was a little bit nervous going into it, obviously, because it's been a little while. It started with my bassist / guitarist amp not working. So like our time, like when we got onto stage, was like delayed by 20 minutes because he's trying to figure out his amp situation. Figures that out. He's like literally turning the guitar over and like hitting the back of it with his fist like it's like a Nintendo cartridge.
Yeah.
And like 3 pounds on his fist, and he's like, okay, all right, I think it's working now. And I'm like, all right, I guess we're going with I think it's working. Once we started playing, in the first song, the microphone, my microphone kept cutting in and out. Now, I'm a rapper. My instrument is my voice.
Yeah.
If I don't have a microphone, that's a problem. And the
Yeah.
funny thing was, the line in my first song I played, I said, like the first line of the refrain, the chorus is, "You don't really want to have me turn this mic on." And it was just like so ironic that was the line that I was repeating over and over, and the microphone actually wasn't working. And then, that happened throughout the first half of the show where the mic just kept cutting in and out. It might even happen all the way to the end. And I'm like sitting there live on stage, like while rapping, trying to troubleshoot. I'm like, I have like the microphone cord. I'm like plugging it, like holding it into the microphone as best as possible to try to get the connection to stick. And it crossed my mind in like that split second over the first, I'd say, minute on stage. I was like, should I stop and should we just like fix this and restart, or should we keep going? And it was literally in my head. I'm asking this and answering this in a matter of 1 second. And then I'm like, no, that would be terrible. That would make for such a worse experience than just being like, screw it, we're going to roll with this. People understand things happen.
Yeah.
So we just rolled with the punches. After that, my bassist forgot the chords he was supposed to play for a couple songs. I forgot one of the songs we were doing in the set, and I had to be reminded. By the end of the night, my drummer, he plays this instrument called a cajon, which is this Spanish drum box that he sits on top of and plays between his legs. By the last song, he had smashed a hole in that thing. So, again, everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong, but you just roll with it. At one point, I put the microphone down and I just started at the top of my lungs rapping as loud as I could for people to hear. And people responded to that. They like that. They want to see that you're human, right? That
Sure.
You don't have everything planned. That's okay. Now, you want to be prepared, but you don't want to be robotically prepared. You want to know things to the point where you can almost like disown them if you realize it's not going as planned. So for a startup who's on stage pitching or in a meeting room pitching, there are going to be things like the slides aren't transitioning properly, or wait, we uploaded the wrong version, or any number of things like that, right? Those things can happen. And you can sit there and be like, oh, crap, no, like that's, not, oh, God, what do we do? Oh, wait, let me plug in the new one. Let me get this right. But what that moment of how you respond right there is going to be indicative to investors of how do you respond under pressure in like overall. Right. And you want to show that you can respond to pressure well. So if something doesn't go as planned, if the slides aren't working properly, again, you want to know things to the point where you can throw them away. So be able to keep rolling with it. Be able to keep talking even without the slides, right? Be able to better illustrate something if the visuals aren't there for you. And don't panic in that moment. Obviously easier said than done, but understand that reacting to it in a way that's disruptive is going to be, because you're like, I'm trying to get it perfect, and we got to stop and pause here so we can get it perfect, will end up being way more imperfect in the long run than rolling with the imperfections in the moment.
And that's one of the reasons why most people will say, whatever you do not try to do a live product demo. Because Murphy's Law, right? And Murphy's Law is anything that will go wrong anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So don't try to do a live product demo. Don't do that to yourself. Don't say, and when I press this button, bing, nothing. Because you look like a child, right? Talk about what it could be. Talk about that you're prototyping. Here's the data we've accomplished. Here's where we're going. But I mean, even if you do a pre-recorded video, oftentimes audio's wrong. This is wrong. That's wrong. Just be cognizant of the fact whenever you're rolling with the punches. Set yourself up for success. Don't set yourself up for failure. Mm-hmm. Whatever you do, prepare far ahead of time, but also do not try to do things that are, all right, guys, we're just going to try this today. No, you're in front of investors who want to put in $250,000 into your business. Have it pre-planned. Know what you're doing. Have it be really, and you know what? If you email them the deck, also bring a USB stick. I don't know if we're at the stage where we can even bring CDs anymore, but like bring a backup. I'm not a big fan. I actually laughed because I went into a meeting and someone had printed out our deck and I was like, what? But that's okay, right? Guaranteedly not going to mess it up, and they took notes on it, and that's totally fine. So I couldn't agree more with rolling with the punches.
Yeah, and it's like, what's really impressive is when you see a rapper freestyle.
Yeah,
think about
no
how
doubt.
you can quote unquote freestyle in the moment if something in your script doesn't go as you expected.
Right. All right, Raj, we're towards the end. So to be like Beyonce, let's go for a recap. So to be like Beyonce, you wanna recap it for us? It's probably better if you do it than I do.
Sure. Yeah. So we've talked to 3 points today about being like Beyonce. Number one, use repetition. Don't be afraid to say the same things over and over again to get a message to stick in your stakeholders' heads. Number two, can I kick it? Ken?
Yes, I can. Yes, you
Say it.
can. Oh no, I'm sorry.
Yes, you can. Get, get the audience involved so they are that much more emotionally invested. Something as simple as raise your hand if you identify with this, all the way to handing out something and having them opening it at the appropriate time.
Raj,
Number
do you see that I'm
three,
red? I'm like embarrassed. I didn't know what to say correctly. See, I've never even heard that song. I'm so embarrassed. Anyway, keep going. I'm sorry.
number three, well, Ken, just roll with it. That's perfect. Number
Yeah.
three, roll with the punches, right? It's all good at the end of the day. How you respond under pressure is in a pitch is indicative of how you respond under pressure overall as a business owner. So don't get caught up in everything being perfect. Be able to freestyle off the dome. I mean, Beyonce has even played a concert where she's walking towards the front of the stage and she trips and falls. But what does Beyonce do? She's Beyonce. She gets right back up and continues playing because she's that cool.
Yeah, I remember the big Super Bowl thing about Beyonce, the last point for today, where she almost fell down during the Super Bowl performance. I mean, notably one of the biggest performances on the globe, but she successfully recovered, and everyone was just so impressed. They're like, good for her. Like, quick minute decision, great job. All right, Raj, thank you very much. So, guys, that was Raj Nathan with RajNation, the most difficult company to pronounce, but you don't forget it. Got to repeat it 6 times to yourself. So we will be back next Thursday at 10 a.m. to talk more about how to make your pitch a performance. Raj, thank you very much. I'll see you next week.
See you next weekend.
All right, bye.